Well, it's time once again for our monthly live stream on Don't Talk TV. And given that the Canadian federal election was just a few days ago, we really have no choice but to talk politics and talk about the election. So I've got a whole bunch of material prepared for that, and hopefully you've got a bunch of questions as well. So let's get right into the episode. Hello, my name is Nicholas Wansbutter. I'm a lawyer in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, and welcome to Don't Talk TV. So we'll be talking about the election today. I've got a number of things planned, but of course, if you've got questions, we'll try to answer them best we can. But what I want to look at is the results. We'll look at why it happened and why I think the evidence shows that there was no voter fraud. And I'm going to show you that evidence. And then I'm going to talk about why I'm not even mad with these election results, talk about what's coming, what I think, what are the three main laws Mark Carney is going to push as the Prime Minister of Canada, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we can do about it. But before we get into all that, please like, share, subscribe. We've actually lost subscribers over the last month. We're back down under 8,500. I don't know whether YouTube is just auto removing people. If people don't like my content and they're bailing, or they're not seeing it and they're thinking, oh, this guy's not making videos anymore. I don't know what it is, but I think liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting, all that is going to help try and spread the word. So if you like what I have to say, if you find it interesting, then please do those things so that we can get even more people educated on the law and talking about the things we talk about on Don't Talk TV. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't, as always, try to promote our Don't Talk TV mug. We're selling these at cost, which is $10. That's no profit to us. That's just something so people can have something Don't Talk TV labeled. And $10 plus shipping. So depending where you are, apparently it varies a little bit from about $18, $20 up to about $25 max. So give you an idea what that's would cost if you're interested. So send an email to us at don'ttalktv@protonmail.com. We got that on the banner on the bottom, and it's a nice mug. So that said, let's dive right into it. I mean, this I think everyone's probably familiar with this by now, that this is what the electoral map of Canada looks like after Monday the 28th. From a zoomed out view like this, it actually doesn't look that terrible. There's a fair bit of blue. Well, not that terrible if you assume that there's any significant difference between blue and red. We'll get into that later. But this is what we got going on, and this is clearly, well, not clearly from this, but the Liberals won a minority government from this. So so viewers know what MK is talking about here. Thank you for remembering me and my work on True Restoration. That was a podcast that I was on years ago. I guess those episodes are still around. More of a Catholic-themed podcast, but thanks for joining us, MK. And, well, Dixie Norma says, Monday felt like a gut punch. Canada's doomed. Don't disagree with the second part. The first part, as we'll get into later, I'm not even mad. It wasn't a gut punch to me because, bit of a preview, spoiler alert, to me it wouldn't have made any significant difference who won. Canada's on the trajectory it's on, but here's our new Prime Minister. Oh, that's so awful. I can't watch more than that. I mean, far be it for me, I guess, to mock someone's dancing abilities, but as I've said before on the previous episode when I was talking about Justin Trudeau dancing at the Taylor Swift concert, which, by the way, he looks way better. I take back everything I said about the cringeworthiness of his dancing after seeing Mark Carney dancing. But this is why you don't dance in public if you're that bad at dancing. But we got a bit of a technical malfunction here, Richard. I don't know what happened there. But that was a bit of a preview of why I'm not mad. But a lot of people are upset, and the alternate media are talking voter fraud. So let's look at the evidence of this. And I think, in my view, the evidence clearly shows there was no voter fraud. Actually, once you look at the evidence, I would be more shocked if the Conservatives had won than the Liberals winning. So first and foremost, and this goes a bit to why I'm not even mad. I mean, Pierre Poilievre, he didn't have the secret sauce needed to beat the Liberals. He had what it took to beat Trudeau, but he didn't have what it took to beat the Liberals, because he's just liberal light, or speed limit following liberal. We'll get more into that later. But I mean, I think this graphic from Abacus data, and as always, we're going to have links to the sources of all of our data in the show description. Here's a big problem: motivation behind Conservative support. And I don't think this is fake news here. I mean, this is from August of 2024, back when the Conservatives were flying high, and there was no doubt that Pierre Poilievre was going to be the next prime minister. 40% of people who were supporting the Conservatives were only supporting them because they disliked Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. And I think specifically they disliked Justin Trudeau. Only 60% were wanting to vote Conservative because they liked Pierre Poilievre. So that was already a big danger sign on the horizon right there. Headshots are, I don't know why we use pencils and not pens, but it's always been that way. Every single election I've voted in since I was 18 back in the 90s has been by pencil. So I'd have to look that up, but I don't know. And to me, it's not a big deal. I just haven't cared enough to look it up. But so this is like basically almost half of the support for Pierre Poilievre was people who are fed up and unhappy with Justin Trudeau. So once Trudeau was gone, that's a problem. Also, axe the tax was his main thing. Once that was, well, not that the tax was axed, as I've discussed previously. I mean, that's actually a bit of a lie, but it was reduced to zero. So that stole its thunder. But then we've also got, again, from Abacus data, Canadians' feelings on immigration. Now, this is actually something a little bit encouraging, aside from the fact that even though people apparently feel this way, they didn't vote in accordance with this. But that's probably because they didn't have anyone to vote for, really, other than the People's Party of Canada. We can talk a bit about why I think they got annihilated this election. But 40% of Canadians were thinking that immigration way too high. 27% said too high. So it's 67% thought immigration was too high. But Pierre Poilievre wasn't campaigning on that he's going to reduce immigration. To the contrary, he was, I mean, all due respect, he was pandering, maybe even worse than the Liberals. We'll get into that in a bit more detail later. But what I want to talk about more before that is some more evidence. I mean, who voted for the Liberal Party of Canada? Well, there's a very powerful coalition of people that voted for the Liberal Party of Canada. And I mean, once you look at this coalition, I mean, how on earth could you even how could you even overcome this? So we've got just like this massive influx of government employees. I mean, look at this since 2020. Look at that spike in public sector employees. Now, private sector employees have gone up a bit too, but the gap you can see has, I mean, private sector and public sector were roughly the same around 2020, a little bit before. Astonishingly, between 2018 and 2019, more people were self-employed than worked for the government or worked for another company. They see 2020, of course, private sector employment drops completely off a cliff because of COVID. Public sector takes a little bit of a dip, but as we know, public sector employees were well cared for. self-employment is dropping down, going down a lot, right? But public sector, huge. And public sector employees, who's paying them and who gave them those jobs? Who's been in government over this whole time period? I mean, this entire scale, you can see public sector employees start taking off around 2015 when Justin Trudeau was elected. I'm not saying every single public sector employee is going to vote for the Liberals, but I'm sure a lot of them were, and that's borne out by the data. When you look at the places like Ottawa, where almost everyone's a public sector employee, deep red. Everyone's voting, not everyone, but the majority of people are voting for the are voting for the Liberals. So that's not surprising at all. And I mean, we can even let me just screen share with you a Globe and Mail article then that's where I got that graphic from, where ballooning public sector is reshaping Canada's economy. The number of workers in Canada's public sector has soared in recent years, outpacing the private sector, but economists warn the growth of government jobs is not sustainable. I mean, no big surprise that it's not sustainable, but I'm more interested in the effect on the election. And here, this shows the spike really well. Like, look how much government employees have been up. Way back in the early 90s, before I was even conscious of such things as high, it dropped off a lot under, of all people, the Liberals, but the Chrétien Liberals were a totally different creature from the current Liberals. I mean, heck, I'd vote for Jean Chrétien over Pierre Poilievre today because Jean Chrétien was more conservative by a long shot than Pierre Poilievre is. So, I mean, that shows you how much things have changed over time and how not conservative the Conservative Party is. But so that's a big one right there in my view. But let's take a look at another part of that coalition. So that's part one of the coalition, public sector employees. Second part of the coalition is the massive influx of immigrants. So I mean, in this graph here, the number and percentage of immigrants of the population in Canada, 1871 to 2021. So you see there's a big bounce up here when that, like World War I, World War II, you got a bunch of people coming from Europe. But then we get here into again, it's been going up steadily since about the mid 90s. So Harper was in on this too, but it's definitely continued unabated, such that we're at levels not seen, 23%. We haven't seen percentages like that since the World Wars. 1931, 22.3% of the Canadian population were foreigners, people who were not born in this country. Now, 23% of the country are people who were not born here. So these are people who aren't going to be loyal to the country, and that's no slight on them. I mean, they're not from here. They didn't grow up here. This is not their country. Why would you expect them to be loyal? I don't blame them. Would you be loyal if you moved to some other foreign country, especially the way immigration goes in our country, where you're told, you keep your culture, you're not coming here to be Canadian, you keep your ways, right? So they're going to be more loyal to the people that brought them here and the people who are offering them more stuff. Now, that's probably why Poilievre and the Conservatives thought their angle, their way of securing more votes was to pander to the immigrant population. It worked a little bit, but it didn't work a lot because a lot of for example, the heavily, very high percentage Indian places where Pierre Poilievre was going and putting the thing on his head, and we'll watch a clip of that later, didn't secure them election victories in those places. So that's part two. Well, Dixie Norm is saying doesn't think that Conservatives would have mandated the job. That's pure speculation. And we don't, so I don't know, maybe yes, maybe no, who knows? But continuing on, here's the third part of the coalition, baby boomers. And here's the Brantford boomer, who really is a part of our history now. I mean, this is a bit of a joke meme playing on those Canadian Heritage Minutes, but this man and the people that think like him played a huge role in this election because they came out in huge numbers to vote for the Liberal Party of Canada and to vote for Mark Carney. So I mean, these people are. This is a huge part of the coalition, and let's look at from another Abacus data. Most important factors when deciding to vote. So they've got this color coded by age groups. Red is 60 and over. So red would be baby boomers. What's the least important reason for voting? The least important factor for baby boomers, making Canada a better place to live. I mean, I guess they had it good. They lived good. They're still living in a good situation, so they don't care about making it better. Maybe they think it's good enough that's why they don't care about making it better. But whatever the reason, they don't care about making Canada a better place. So, let's stick with the current people. Making housing more affordable, second least important topic to baby boomers. Then I should pause to say that baby boomers still account for 1/3 of the electorate. So that's a huge block of voters who don't care about making housing affordable and don't care about making Canada a better place to live. What they really care about is giving the finger to Donald Trump, to the bad orange man in the United States. I mean, look at that bar. Like, that's right to the top. 50%. That's their number one issue by far. Surprisingly, reducing cost of living is number 2. And of course, improving Canada's healthcare system, that would be important to them because, I mean, it's just a fact of life that as you get older, you tend to need more healthcare. So Bill Davies says, I'm a boomer and it sure does not apply to me. Well, absolutely, this doesn't apply to every single person of that age group, right? Because there is still about 5% of baby boomers who are saying they want to make Canada a better place to live. And there's about 8% who are saying they want to make housing more affordable. So, Mr. Davies, I'm sure you're part of that 5 and 10% of people who valued things like making Canada better, managing the federal debt, growing the economy. But unfortunately, 50% of people of your age range valued, giving the finger to the bad orange man above all else. So you look at this, I mean, that is such a powerful coalition between those 3 groups. And that's a lot of people, between immigrants, public sector workers, and baby boomers. Now, there's, of course, overlap between those 3 groups because there's a lot of immigrants. Anyone who's gone to a Service Canada or Service Ontario or tried calling Canada Revenue Agency for help with your taxes, you've experienced that there's a large number of newcomers to this country who work for the government. So there is overlap. But so, I mean, again, baby boomers, that's 33% of the electorate right there. And then you look at all that, and in my view, it's not surprising at all. I mean, the Conservatives had a massive uphill battle. Once Trudeau was out of the scene and people weren't upset at him anymore because he wasn't around anymore. And once Donald Trump started waging a trade war on Canada and talking about 51st state and all that, then that's when the faux nationalism came out, and that's when that's when it shifted things back to the Liberals. And I think and we've seen this in Canada for so long, right? The Liberals are generally the party in power. They're in power a lot more than the Conservatives, because I think they've always had that. Well, obviously, baby boomers were young once upon a time, but the Liberals, I think, have generally had the public sector employees and the public sector employees and immigrants on their side, because they're the ones who are giving the most to those 2 groups, because Conservatives are generally a bit more fiscally responsible, although I'm not sure how fiscally responsible Pierre Poilievre's platform was, although everything is relative, right? I mean, relative to Mark Carney, okay, it was a bit more fiscally conservative. Objectively, it was not a conservative or fiscally responsible platform. But keep in mind, of course, that people also listen to the legacy media a lot, and especially that older generation, baby boomers. I mean, they grew up with a media that was not so openly partisan, so they had that trust. I mean, they grew up in the era of Walter Cronkite, so I think they tend to trust it more. Now, it's disappointing that the alternate media seem to all jump on this bandwagon of hating on the People's Party of Canada. Moose on the Loose here said PPC is not a real party. Maxime doesn't even live in Canada. Well, that's a falsehood. Mr. Bernier lives in Canada. He just has like a snowbird winter residence, like a cottage that he goes to sometimes in Florida. It doesn't mean he lives in Florida. The man's allowed to go on vacation once in a while. I bet if Moose on the Loose was a baby boomer or however, whatever generation Max would be, maybe he's an early Gen Xer, and had the money and the time, why wouldn't you want to go to Florida? Millions of Canadians do. I was saying maybe you should run for a mayor of some town in Florida. I mean, this is just hyper partisan stuff that doesn't really have any bearing on reality, but it's unfortunate because the people who should have been supporting the People's Party of Canada trashed it instead. And this is part of why Canada's in the state it's in, because even the alternate media supports the status quo, not an actual solution. And we'll get into in a minute how the Conservative Party of Canada is status quo. It's not the solution. Shadow Davis, I was actually on his podcast during COVID, so I was especially disappointed to see this tweet from him saying that Bernier needs to stand aside and withdraw the PPC candidates at once. I don't even know why. It's not like the PPC did any damage to the Conservative Party. I mean, maybe in some ridings like Kitchener-Conestoga, if you assume that every single People's Party of Canada vote would have been Conservative if the People's Party of Canada wasn't there, I don't think that's provable. I can tell you that all the votes from my household that went to the People's Party of Canada would have gone to no one if it was only the Conservatives, the Liberals, and the NDP that were running, or they'd go to a different third party if there was one. But on my ballot, there was only those four. So I suspect, but anyway, in Kitchener-Conestoga, the PPC got about 750 votes. Conservatives lost by about 500. So maybe in that riding you could argue, but you know what? That's not a reason for the People's Party of Canada to cease to exist. That's a reason for the Conservative Party of Canada to take notice and start being a little bit more conservative, live up to their name, instead of doing a bait and switch on everyone and gaslighting everyone in Canada by calling themselves a Conservative Party. That's my view of the matter. Don't blame the People's Party of Canada because the Conservative Party isn't that conservative. Which brings me to why I'm not even mad. This wasn't a gut punch to me. I mean, it was a little bit disappointing just because it was a reminder of how messed up things are in Canada. But aside from that, I mean, like, what? Like, do I care if this man isn't Prime Minister of Canada? I mean, this is what he had to say during COVID. Today would be a good day for Trudeau's tearful apology for leaving the borders open to COVID and failing to deliver enough vaccines. Shame on Trudeau. He didn't get enough people jabbed with that. And buying into the third wave rhetoric. That was from April of 2021. And then earlier the same month, Trudeau on vaccines like the kid who keeps the whole family waiting for hours and jumps in the car and screams, "What's the holdup? Move it." Personally, for the most part, I don't care whether he wouldn't have forced it or not. The point is, he was still all in on the COVID narrative, all in on this vaccine that was never subject to the sort of testing that new medications are supposed to be subject to. This is a distinction without a difference, in my view. And also most vaccine mandates, okay, the federal government had some, but provincial governments, they had the option whether to do them or not, and individual employers had the option whether they do them or not. So whether you're pushing the jab, you're pushing the jab, which is why I personally don't accept the defense of Donald Trump for doing Operation Warp Speed of like, oh, well, he wouldn't have forced anyone. Well, who cares if he wouldn't have forced anyone, in my view, if he's the man that made it happen. And there's no vaccine, you can't force anyone to take it. So that's why I'm not even mad. Richard, could you cue up the video of Pierre Poilievre's quote Canada First unquote rally? I think it was in Brampton.
In this Canada First for a change. Let's bring it home. Now get out and vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm talking about right there. So Bill Davis says about 40% of the people did not vote. It would be interesting to see which way they lean. I think it was actually more like 30%. I think there was 68%. But yes, I mean, 30%, that could make a huge difference in an election. And that's what I was wondering. Like, do the people that don't vote, who would they vote for? Would they vote for no one? Or are they not voting because just none of the options appeal to them? Would those people come out if there were a real alternative, something that's not the uniparty, something that's really different? I mean, Pierre Poilievre was about faster and easier immigration when 67% of the population said that they think immigration is too high. So again, like, I'm not even mad. The only significant difference between between the Conservative Party of Canada and the Liberal Party of Canada is firearms. And so that's one significant difference. But I'm not too wrapped around the axle over that difference because, yes, people aren't going to be able to keep their firearms. But you can't use them anyway under our current laws, really. I mean, if you had a home invader and you actually shot him, you're still getting arrested and going to jail, whether firearms are legal or not. So, and Headshot says he didn't vote because there's no political solution to the problems we face. That's a good point. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. We are beyond being able to vote our way out of this situation. And then when we talk about what we're going to do or what can we do, I'll get into that. I don't think going and putting an X and a pencil next to someone's name, especially not someone with Conservative Party of Canada, is going to get us out of the situation we're in. It's there's more work that needs to be done than voting. But let's talk about what's coming next. What are the top 3 laws that I think are going to be coming from the Liberal Party of Canada under Mark Carney? As I just was talking about firearms, number 1, they're going to ban everything, I believe. They've already banned everything, pretty much everything that's semi-automatic, almost everything that takes a magazine. Handguns are effectively banned. That's going to happen. But what else is going to happen? Crime's going to go up, as this graph ably shows. And we'll have our sources for this in the show description. I got this off of the National Firearms Association. They posted this picture, but I know they got it from someone else. But so the orange on this graph, that is gun crime. That's all firearm homicides. Yellow is handgun homicides. Green is long gun homicides. Look, and you can see homicides committed by people that actually have position acquisition licenses, basically flat. It's gone up very slightly in 2021 and 2022, but it's really negligible. But notice the trend here. The light blue shows when Harper was prime minister. The light red shows when Justin Trudeau was prime minister. And you can see all the milestones of these different laws that are put in place. The firearms crime just keeps going up and up. So they're going to keep doing it, though, because this isn't about reducing crime, in my view. It's about disarming the populace for various ideological reasons. But number 2, is censorship. I talked about this recently, episode 247. I'm not going to repeat what I said there, but I recommend you have a look at that if you want to see that. I showed the proof that Mark Carney has said, this is what I'm doing. There's going to be mass censorship under him. I mean, I think it's going to be China style, where many websites are not allowed because certain viewpoints aren't allowed. Because in the irony of democracy. To save democracy, we have to destroy democracy. So Franklin Davis, I'm curious about fake social insurance numbers and mail-in votes. I'm not aware of that. Maybe email us. We could have a look at that. But as I just discussed, though, they don't need any fraud for the Liberals to win almost every time. They've already got it cooked into the very system. And liberal democracy, that it will always be that way, because that's just how liberal democracy works. Even the ancient Greeks figured out that democracy will only work until people realize they can vote themselves a share of other people's stuff. And then we're well into that phase. And to take other people's stuff to justify, you've got to demonize those people, or discredit them, say they're bad people, or praise and pump up these victims. We have to give them money. So we're well into that. And you don't need voter fraud. I don't think you need voter fraud at all. So why would they bother doing voter fraud? I'll answer that interesting question in a minute about if I've thought about leaving the country, where would I move to? But third, let me just say carbon tax is going to be back. And I'm sure no one watching this video doubted for a second that it would be back. But I don't know, Richard, if StreamYard's going to let us play this one, but if you could play that Carney clip where he's talking about how everything under his government has to be.
And now it's time for the financial sector to deliver. To reach net zero, every country, every company, every bank, every investor, every pension fund around the world will need to make some big changes. In the run-up to COP26 in Glasgow, we have an enormous opportunity to bring climate change into the heart of every financial decision. And our plan will manage the risks from climate change while helping to seize the opportunities from a newer, greener economy.
I think that's enough of that to get the flavor. Carbon tax or something like it is going to be back, and it's going to be back with a vengeance. You don't need to be Nostradamus to make that prediction. So that gets to the what we should do about this. So Dixie Normus asked about, have I thought about leaving Canada, and where would I move to? Well, yes. Richard, my PR guy, Richard, was shocked to hear this, that I've been contemplating whether to leave this country since about 2008, 2009, because I saw the writing on the wall back then. Now, I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just saying that my worldview, my perspective on the way things were going in Canada, back then I already started considering it. I went to Ecuador in 2016 to check that out as a possible location, and that's probably because I had a friend down there who he sold everything, moved down there about 2005-ish, and he bought a coffee plantation. He married a Colombian lady, and he was living the dream down there. Well, sort of living the dream. I mean, I visited Ecuador. Gorgeous, beautiful country. I wish I had some of my Ecuador pictures on this this computer. I could screen share those. But it is a third world country, and it did remind me that as bad as things are in Canada, I mean, 2016 was like a golden age of Canada compared to now. But even but so it's more so back then than now. But in Ecuador, it was still a third world country. I mean, gorgeous, land was cheap, climate was beautiful. I mean, it's on the equator, but it's in the mountains, so 18.5 degrees Celsius during the day, 10 degrees Celsius at night. I mean, it's perfection. Land, food cheap, but like no amenities, and like can't get books. The mail system does not function whatsoever. Like, I mean, you would have to bring everything that you would need for a lifetime with you in terms of the things that you might want, especially things you'd want in an English-speaking country. For me, especially books. My children are homeschooled. Homeschooling is legal down there, but how am I going to get books if I can't order them and have them come through the mail? Just because absolutely everything gets stolen out of the mail there. So I consider that. And then, of course, I went to Poland last year, and we did a series of videos on Don't Talk TV about Poland, and I highly recommend that you watch those. They're a lot of fun making, and they also demonstrate how Poland is, I mean, it's a lot better than Canada in all ways. I would say it's like Canada, similar to Canada about 30, 40 years ago. So the problem with that is I could see there how they're on a similar trajectory to us because they're part of the European Union and they're part of NATO. So, and their cost of living is really high there. So that's a bit of a problem. And it's also a problem that I chose the career of lawyer, which it's been good to me. I've been able to support my family, but it also chains me to Canada because I only know our legal system. Now I could probably practice in Britain with ease, but like going from Canada to Britain, it'd be kind of like jumping from the frying pan into the fire. At best, it would be a lateral move. What's the point? And why throw away a practice that I've sunk blood, sweat, and tears into? So it's something I've considered, but the problem is, as bad as things are getting in Canada, they're getting bad everywhere. And it's always, what's better, the devil you know or the devil you don't, right? So I know a lot of people have left Canada. I think there's different considerations of what stage of life you're in and how many dependents you have. I mean, I have 5 children, and my wife's a stay-at-home mom. So I have a lot depending solely upon me. So I need to be able to provide, and my options for providing for people outside of Canada are not as good as they are within Canada, as much as Canada can do. So as Dixon Norman says, right, not much we can do besides take the abuse. And again, it goes to the devil you know or the devil you don't, because there's probably abuse going to come down the pike for you in a lot of countries too. I mean, again, Ecuador, when I talked to my friend about what happened there during COVID, I was thinking, thank goodness we never moved to Ecuador, because it was horrible there in Ecuador. They locked things down like you wouldn't believe, way worse than Canada. And he lost his business. He had a cafe that he ran because he had a coffee plantation. And I remember asking him, well, why do you bother with the cafe? You got this beautiful plantation. He said, well, I can't not have a cafe. Well, I can sell bags of coffee to the Chinese for, $10 for a 100-pound bag. Or if at my cafe, I can sell it for $2 American a cup to tourists. I mean, I can't say no to that. I mean, he's surviving, but he lost a lot. So because it was brutal there for lockdowns. Poland had some pretty sketchy stuff during the lockdowns as well. I mean, there's other countries to consider. I know a lot of people have gone to Mexico. You can at least own firearms in Mexico, but you're also in a country that's basically run by the cartels. And look at their president. I mean, it's like a female version of Mark Carney. And then, Uruguay is a country I've studied a bit from afar, but I haven't been there. So who knows? But, there's ups and downs everywhere. And I think there's things to be said for, at least I know the lay of the land here. I know people here. I speak the language. I know the customs. So it's easier to navigate a terrible situation. So Dixon said, I thought you would have said the USA. Well, the problem is the USA is impossible for a person like me to emigrate to. So I'd love if Donald Trump offers asylum to Canadians, I would think long and hard about that. I have to respectfully disagree with Headshot that Russia seems like a good choice. In my view, Russia is pure propaganda. That country is nothing like what they try and present. And people try to say, oh, it's based. Russia is not based at all. They do a good propaganda campaign, and I'm not sure why they do. I'm not sure what the benefit to Russia is, other than sowing division, I suppose, to present themselves as this based Christian nation. But they're not. They have their own immigration problems. They have one of the lowest birth rates in the world. They have the highest abortion rate in the world, the highest divorce rate in the world. And corruption. They have outrageous corruption in Russia. My dad actually traveled in Russia, and let me just tell you a couple of quick stories about Russia once you get outside Moscow. He'd be driving on the highway and all the telephone poles were cut down. So he asked his driver, why are the telephone poles cut down? Well, people cut them down and steal the copper wire to sell it. The reason he was there is because his company had tried investing in Russia. They bought it was an agriculture company. They bought a bunch of combines. one day the local governor showed up with his soldiers and said, "This all belongs to us now." So my dad went there to try to negotiate, try to save something, try to get something back from them. And he speaks Russian because I have some Russian heritage in my background. And he traveled to dozens of countries in the world. That's the only country he ever had to travel with an armed guard because it was so dangerous. They had to bribe, the police would pull them over just with made up, like, oh, there's a sign back there that says you're not allowed to pass between 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock. There was no sign. He was just fishing for a bribe, so I had to bribe him to carry on their way. There's curfews in Russia. You want to talk about lockdowns? They have curfews way before COVID, and that wasn't that long ago. It was during Putin's time. That was maybe 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. Things I don't think have gotten a whole lot better. I know people why do people still get trophy wives from Russia or mail order brides from Russia? Women wouldn't be willing to be mail order brides if Russia was some great country. But those of you who think it's awesome, I recommend that you go on a scouting mission first. Don't sell everything and move there. Go stay there for 3 months or a month to get the lay of the land and see, is this as good as the internet makes it look? I would recommend that for any country. I mean, that's why I went to Ecuador. That's why I went to Poland. I'm like, I can't make any decisions without seeing with my own eyes and actually trying to live there a while to see what it's like to actually live there. So Manitoba says it's much safer than in the US. They crack down hard on corruption and crime. I'd love to see the evidence of that. So if you could email us, Richard, you could throw the email address up there again. I'd love to see the proof and the evidence of that, because I'm open to changing my mind. I'm going off of the information I've received from people that I trust. But if you've got some verifiable evidence of that, I'd love to see it. Because hey, if there is an option out there, and I have some Russian heritage, I could get Russian citizenship, not like that, but I could get it because my grandfather was Russian. So Russia and Poland as well, actually, they have, the way you get citizenship is by heritage. So if your parent was Russian or Polish, you get that, you're automatically that citizenship. You just have to, they just don't know I exist, or they don't know my dad existed. So I would just have, so I could potentially get Russian citizenship if I wanted. So very interested if you've got some verifiable proof, because I go off evidence and I don't consider it, some Twitter, channel. Like, I'd want to see, some solid data. I'd be interested in seeing that. But that said, it's almost 8 o'clock. We've been going for a while here. So interesting discussion. I thank you, everyone who's throwing some comments up there, and follow up on the things we talked about to don'ttalktv@protonmail.com. I'd be very interested in seeing what information you have. And of course, this video is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, or Derek Tomaszewski's Warsaw Plan was spoiled. Well, email me about that. I'd love to hear about that as well. But I'm always interested in talking to other Polish people. I love Polish people. I married one, and I love Poland. But this isn't legal advice. I said call Lori if you need legal advice. And as I said at the beginning of the show, we've got to somehow break through the 8,500, get to 10,000 subscribers, because I think Don't Talk TV would take off. I like to think that I'm providing some valuable information, and if you agree with that, please do like, share, and subscribe so we can get up there and get the word out more. We kind of skipped over a bit of what you can do about things. We got off into the weeds about about me leaving. Episode 83, check that out, because I laid out the recipe there. I firmly believe that what I talked about in that episode 83, is that's what we need to do rather than voting. So Richard, if you could throw that in the chat, and of course put it in, we'll have it in the show description. That'd be fantastic. And yeah, email us if you've got show descriptions. Follow up on our discussions. Love to hear from you. And again, if you found this video at all interesting, helpful, and informative, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, and following us on social media. Oh, and before I go, I forgot, we've got a very special episode coming up next week. Probably no one watching anymore at this point. Actually, it's still 23, I see. I think we've had the same number of viewers, so thank you for staying for the whole thing. Episode 250 next week. Amazing discussion I had with Derek Fromm. He's a lawyer from Alberta who I met during COVID. One of the very few lawyers who I'm on the same page with. Maybe, Richard, you can play that clip.
I'm sure listeners have or viewers have seen that old cartoon, political cartoon of a cow that's eating in Alberta but being milked in Ontario. It's been pretty much since Alberta entered Confederation in 1905 that Albertans have been dissatisfied with how things are done, because it seems like Albertans are expected to pay for the excesses of Ontario and Quebec. So Quebec can say no to oil and gas going through the province, and they don't have to develop their own resources, but they will continue to accept equalization payments from Alberta, even though they could make their own way. And it's basically, Albertans feel like wealth is being extracted from this province, and wealth is work. You earn wealth by working. And so it's essentially, we're being forced to work to provide for Ontario.
Yeah, so that's a very brief preview of what we're going to have next week. So tune in. Derek and I talked about the rule of law. We talked about the role of God in society and how that impacts the rule of law, and specifically the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and how the supremacy of God factors into that. Obviously, we talk about Alberta separation and other related topics. So please join us next week. I think you'll really enjoy it. And amazingly, it's our 250th episode. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week.